Welcome back to the NBA Daily. I'm Dave DuFour here with my good buddy Keith Parish, the host of Grits and Grinds, a Grizzlies podcast, also Fast Break Breakfast, where, we talk about food quite often. Keith, I hope you're having a good summer.
Summer's been good, Dave. Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Happy to talk about the Grizzlies and all the changes. Right. But also still an exciting team that I think continually flies under the radar.
Yeah. Well, let's dig in. Again, the Grizzlies did make a bunch of changes. They were 48 and 34 last year. They were the 8th seed, getting out of the play-in before getting swept by the eventual champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder. Look, I think it's easy to look at this team and say, oh, the 8th seed last year. But you forget that this was the 2 seed as late as what was it? Did they make it to March?
That I don't have on the tip of my tongue as we record deep in the offseason. They were the 2 seed for, way past the trade deadline. At the trade deadline, they were the 2 seed in the Western Conference. And they only finished a couple games behind the eventual 2 seed. So, they were certainly in the thick of things. I would also say, even as a Grizzlies fan and podcaster, we forget things like, the Grizzlies had, the 6th best net rating last year. They were one of the only teams that finished top 10 in offensive and defensive rating. It's like the Celtics and the Thunder and the Cavs and the Grizzlies. But everyone's like, the Grizzlies had a horrible year because you got embarrassed in the first round. They, of course, trailed off greatly at the end of last season. Right. Taylor Jenkins got fired. So when you finish with the whimper, that's essentially all anyone remembers. And of course, seemed to lead to some big changes.
Well, let's talk about the coaching change before we get into the summer. They did make the change from Taylor Jenkins to Thomas Izola. What do you expect to see from this team that's different than last year? I mean, weren't they already running at least a variation of his system?
Well, so there was some confusion over whose system was whose. Mm-hmm. The beginning of the year, a lot was made about the Grizzlies, the circle offense, the lack of screening, a lot of cuts. And that was not Isolo's strategy. That was a different thing. With the change to Tomas, supposedly is going to be more screening, a lot more big man setting screens, maybe playing more to Zach Edey's strengths. There's an argument it plays to Ja Morant's strengths, although there are some concerning, like Ja Morant's pick and roll numbers, not incredible. He's actually better at just blowing by guys. So the idea, I think the changes we're going to see, and again, he did not have the best finish to the year, and it's hard to lay that at his feet. Sure. But also when stuck in a tough situation, I don't know if he exactly bathed himself in glory either. They crashed out to the end of the year, but now I do think he wants to run more like big man screening, and also much like Taylor Jenkins did, wants to play at a high pace. I think we're going to see a lot of pressing. I think they're going to take a page. I mean, they did some of this last year. And of course, you saw what the Thunder did, what the Pacers did, a very similar regular season team to the Grizzlies. I mean, the Grizzlies had a much better regular season profile than even the Pacers, but you saw what the Pacers did, how they just kept getting better and better throughout the postseason. And a lot of it's ball pressure and playing fast. I think that's something that Isla wants to do, but also a lot of this is just conjecture, because I don't know much about what he's done. I mean, he has a Eurobasket history or EuroLeague history, coaching over there. And they obviously felt highly enough about him to hire him and make him a highly paid assistant last year. Yeah. And then, of course, made him the interim coach and then gave him the full-time position this offseason without interviewing any other candidates. So I think it's a little bit of a mystery box. Like we can say, I think they're going to do a lot of ball pressure stuff, but beyond that, I don't really know. I don't know if they have the bodies for it. That's the one thing I worry about with this system. If you're doing a lot of ball pressure, the Pacers were going 10, 11 deep, and I don't know if the Grizzlies have the guys to do that. Let's move on to the summer. I mean, what do you feel like was the most impactful change that they made this summer? I mean, obviously, we're probably going to talk about the Bane trade, I'm assuming. Oh, I would say, does trading Desmond Bane away count?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's clearly the most impactful move they made is getting rid of Desmond Bane and swapping him out. In some way, people highlight the draft haul they got from the Magic. But I mean, essentially, when you talk about this year, They traded away Desmond Bane for the draft rights to Cedric Coward and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. And that's a massive change.
Yeah.
And whether or not it's a positive one in the short term, I doubt it. I mean, there's some argument that maybe they could somewhat recreate in the aggregate. They could channel some of the offense from Desmond Bane towards more Edey, more Ja Morant, more Jaren Jackson Jr. Maybe that's the theory, but they decided to pivot because they were not close to the Thunder.
Right.
And they said, all right, let's just, instead of paying Desmond Bane this relatively rich contract, I would argue he's paid for what he is, which is one of the best shooting guards in the NBA. That's what they make. But they said, let's split up that money. Let's go a different way. Let's get some future draft assets and try to maybe have another route to building a contender.
And you feel like this was financially motivated. You don't see an argument for, like you said, spreading that money to multiple guys. Again, talking about how they need depth.
I think there's a strong argument that it's not financially motivated. I think there are a lot of teams in the same exact situation who would have said, I think we might be the 6th best team in the West. What if we traded one of our best players for 4 first-round picks and a swap and become the 7th best team in the West? I think there's a lot of GMs and front offices that are like, yeah, let's do that. Because, why not? Why not take more bites at the apple in the draft?
Right.
See if we can find a cheaper contributor, a guy on a rookie deal, but maybe you find that transformative guy. You could even find the next Desmond Bane.
Yeah, that's true.
No, but it's the, so I don't know. Like I think there's a fair argument that you could say your odds of contending are much better if you have several lottery picks, if you try out Cedric Coward, if that pick that might come from Phoenix next year is in the lottery, that is a more realistic chance to contention than sticking with what you had, which was Desmond Bane and Jaren Jackson Jr. and Ja Morant, and then trying to fill in the pieces around those guys.
Yeah. Well, now that there's a big void in who the 3rd best player is for the Grizzlies, who's the player that you expect to either take a big step forward or do you think maybe losing Desmond Bane causes somebody to take a step back? Who do you think has the most potential for boom or bust?
I think the player that the Grizzlies want to step forward is Zach Edey. I think you hope coming off that first team all rookie campaign that he maybe could handle more of a offensive load. He was not very polished offensively. That was a slight disappointment for me. I don't follow college basketball very closely, if at all. I kind of thought he might have more in the bag when he got the ball in the post. Not so much. He's huge. His hands weren't very good as far as catching passes and things, but he's a solid screener, solid rebounder. And so I think they want to get more out of him. And again, more shots should become available. You have low usage guys like KCP probably in the starting lineup. Jalen Wells, not really a high usage guy. I don't anticipate Jalen Wells taking a step up, but maybe that is something they're thinking about for him too, that he'll have a bigger role. But I would think this team right now, they're booking on Jaren being great again, on Ja Morant regaining the all-star form, at least playing enough games to make an all-star game.
Right.
But then I think a big step forward from Zach Edey in year 2 could be what they have, lined up.
Well, let's talk about Ja Morant and Jaren Jackson. What are the expectations out of them this year? You mentioned Ja needing to play 60 games. Is 60 enough for your best player?
I think splitting hairs. I'd take 60. I'd take, most guys in the NBA, it's 60 to 70 games as it is.
Sure.
The actual number of guys eligible for those all NBA spots, very low. The number of guys who actually hit 65 games. I think 60 is totally reasonable for a guy like Ja Morant. Of course, it's going to be, is he available in the postseason? And so far, he hasn't necessarily been consistently available in the postseason. But I think the expectation, like I said, Ja Morant needs to be in the All-Star game. Jaren Jackson Jr. needs to continue to be in the All-Star game, and they need those guys to be the alpha, omega, just the 2 stars carrying everybody else.
What do you think about Jaren? What does he need to do in your mind to justify? Listen, none of us are justifying what we're paid. What does he need to do to justify that giant contract?
Well, I think Jaren creates winning basketball at an unbelievable level. And I think the money paid to him is absolutely worth it. I think the question marks for Jaren have become in the postseason when the other team can scheme specifically for you and they can send those double teams. And when you're playing a unbelievably good defense like the Thunder, and they're like, yeah, we're going to swarm you and we're going to put Caruso on you because you can't blow by him. And by the way, if you get by him, you're going to be met at the rim by a Holmgren or a Hartenstein or something. So I think he's had some postseason struggles. And then going back a few years ago against the Lakers, when these teams can put whoever is on him, like an AD on him, and say, listen, we're going to double team you. You have to pass. You have to do something else. Whether or not he can do that, because he's not a natural passer. He's not a gifted passer. He is an unbelievably good defensive player, as everybody knows. He also is underrated offensively. And maybe, again, it's because people just watch him in the postseason, and he's had in his career way more struggles in the postseason. But his regular season numbers, he just cooks guys. Right. And he scores at an unbelievable rate. He's one of the top per minute scorers in the NBA, which, again, I feel like people just don't recognize. You have one of the best defenders in the NBA who's also one of the best per minute scorers. That's a guy worth every dollar you just paid him. So I think for him, it's the fine tuning of the postseason performance. Of course, there's nitpicks about the foul trouble. I would say mostly overblown. People want him to be a great rebounder. My joke is, yeah, I would also like him to be a Hall of Famer. If he's one of the best scorers and defenders, yeah, if he was also an elite rebounder, you're talking about one of the best three guys in the league. So I think some of those concerns are overblown. The main concerns, Jaren's proven he can be like a first or second level, scorer, a go-to guy on a playoff team. It, for me, has become, can you now do this in the postseason when they have a whole week of focus to be like, how are we going to ruin Jaren Jackson Jr.'s night? I like to see him be able to overcome that.
Look, they just made a big move, obviously moving on from Desmond Bane. Is there anybody on this roster that you see as a trade candidate, whether it's somebody that you feel like they could either upgrade the spot or use as a part of a bigger package to maybe land, a fifth starter or whatever they might be looking for?
Yeah, I think the answer is way down the bench. I think it's probably John Conchar still. They've been trying to move off John Conchar's money for a little bit now. I think his just salary size is going to be a useful chip because they can send him out and bring back a guy making $12, $13 million if they want to. They're far enough under the luxury tax where that could be a thing. So if they're going to make a move this year, I don't think it's a big trade where you use like the matching salary of Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. I actually think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope may be more likely than not to play the whole year. I think they like him as an actual player. I think they're thinking we can get him better or closer to what he was on the Nuggets and on the teams before that. Obviously not a great year for him in Orlando, but I think they like him as, this team needs veteran leadership. I think that's still a thing. I think Desmond Bane was the locker room leader, and there's a vacuum there. I don't think that's Ja Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr.'s role on the team. So I think they want KCP for both on-court play and probably off-court leadership. So I don't actually think, maybe if someone, I'm not thinking of who the player would be, maybe if there's a legit guy who is available in that like $30 million salary range, they could say, all right, we're going to use a couple of these picks we got from Orlando and KCP to bring him in. But to me, that's unlikely. I think more likely would be them saying, John Conchar, thanks for your service. We gave Cam Spencer a full contract. We already have Gigi Jackson, Vince Williams, Cedric Coward, Jalen Wells. Maybe that would be the guy most likely to be traded. If it's not Conchar, maybe it is one of those wings I just mentioned. Like, this is a make or break year for Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr. Yeah. If you were betting, if you're setting a line for which guy gets traded, I'd put Conchar first and then maybe Vince or Gigi next, because it is make or break for those guys this season.
They'll immediately miss his rebounding. His rebounding per minute numbers are insane.
One of the best rebounders on the squad, Conchar.
Insane. Pound for pound might be the best rebounder in the league. He can help
a contender. Hit us up, contenders.
What's the biggest swing factor? What's the make or break for this team? If this team was to launch itself into championship contention status, what happens?
The true variable is, I would say, if Cedric Coward can be good. That's, I guess anybody can say that for any rookie. I think the true thing is it's just Ja Morant. Like if we could turn that dial up from 60 games to 72 games, if Ja Morant shows the same explosiveness, if he's able to finish his floaters, if he actually hits some 3-pointers. I mean, concerning trends with his 3-point shooting. How about just the
layups?
Yeah. I mean, his finishing, I can't remember again. It's August as we record this. Don't know what's coming out, but my immediate recall for all the intricate stats might have slipped my mind. But like, there's still some, like, there's so much good from Ja. I feel like it's just overclouded by just the availability and him only playing 3 games in a row, 4 games in a row. He get 5 games in a row once and we got all excited. And so him trying to piece together a whole season to see, I mean, to see, is that guy still there? You know, right. is the peaks. And again, he had games last year where he was like absolutely all-star. You're like, oh yeah, that's why we all thought he was one of the top 15 players in the NBA. Like, I think that's the true swing factor. If Ja and Jaren are there, I mean, also there's some health in that, I guess. Not just beyond Ja. Jaren had toe surgery. They're hoping he's back by the start of the year. And then there's Edey had ankle surgery. He is going to miss the start of the season. So I guess that's another swing factor for the Grizzlies, as it seems to be every year.
What do you feel like the most realistic outcome is? If you had to lay some money on the line, where are you laying it?
I think the most realistic outcome is this team is mid-40s wins, as they usually are. I mean, I say usually. I mean, they were in the 50s a couple times, 3-4 seasons ago. I would say most realistic outcome is they're fighting for the play-in spots. There are a lot of teams in the West where they're just, it's going to all come down to a twisted ankle here or there on their players. And we saw it. I mean, last year, of course, all the teams outside of the Thunder were just so bunched together. And I think it's going to happen again where a lot of squads are going to win between 40 and 48 games. And I expect the Grizzlies to be in that fray. And I would say, 44, 45, 46 wins around there. More likely than not, they end up back in the play-in.
You think that they get out of the play-in and have any chance in the first round?
I don't give them much of a chance in the first round. I don't think they have that elite talent to match up with, like, I mean, of course not the Nuggets or the Thunder, but I still struggle to see how they're going to beat the Timberwolves or catch up. I mean, even like, I don't know. I feel like the Lakers are tough. The Rockets, of course, are expected to be really, really good. As we sit now, no, I don't think they're in that category. And so I wouldn't expect them to win a first round series. But I mean, again, maybe it all gels. And I can see the vision where if you surround Ja and Jaren, and of course, like Scottie Pippen Jr. is really good. We haven't mentioned Ty Jerome, which feels like an unbelievable free agent signing. And like all of those guys maybe going to be pushing the pace, a lot of ball handling. And then you have depth if Santi Aldama, continues to progress, if Brandon Clark is back healthy. There are a lot of good players on the team. And so maybe there is a world where it all comes together and they can take advantage of maybe some other team's injury, and you do see them break back into the second round.
Well, guys, you can follow along with the Grizzlies all this season over at Grits and Grinds over on YouTube, podcasts, wherever you listen to them. Keith Parish, he'll also be here, popping in all year, anytime the Grizzlies do something fun. Thank you, Keith, for hanging out with us. Guys, stick around. We're going to have a lot more team previews coming up after this.
We are continuing our season preview shows, and now we're going to talk about the Portland Trail Blazers. And with us to talk about the Blazers is Sean Hieken of the Rose Garden Report. Sean, how's it going?
Good. How about you?
Doing great. Ready to talk basketball, preseason basketball. A team that I find myself thinking about more than I thought I would is the Blazers. And there were a lot of different things that happened this summer to this Blazers team and organization. But what do you think was the most impactful change that happened this summer to the Blazers?
I think there's two that you kind of have to point to. And surprisingly, neither one of them is the Damian Lillard return.
Oh, okay.
Because, I mean, look, he's not going to play this year. Everybody kind of knows that. So that was a great, news cycle. A lot of fans are excited about it. But, it's going to be 18 months before we even see what he looks like when the next time he plays on the court. So I'm not even really counting that. The two things that I think are really potentially going to have huge impact on, this franchise for years to come. One of them obviously is the sale. We just found out a couple weeks ago that Tom Dundon, the owner of the Carolina Hurricanes, is the buyer and is the guy who's leading the ownership group that's going to buy the team about 3 months after the Paul Allen estate announced the team got put up for sale. So that's obviously the biggest thing. And I think right neck and neck with that almost is the drafting of young Hansen.
Yes. I'm so glad we're only like 2 minutes in here, maybe not even 2 minutes in yet. We're already talking about young Hansen.
Dude, I mean, look, it was as much off my radar for them to take him at 16 as it was everybody else's. I had kind of the same reaction everybody else did.
Yeah.
But you see him at Summer League, and obviously Summer League competition is not the same as actual NBA competition. So when he actually starts playing in October, it's going to be a learning curve. But you watch him at Summer League and you're like, okay, there's something here. They saw something that made it worth draft. Like if you just watch those games and you took away, anybody's name or where anybody was projected to go pre-draft, and you just told somebody who had never followed the draft before, this 7'2" Chinese guy is who the Blazers took in the first round. People would say, oh yeah, it makes sense. That's reasonable. So he might actually be good. And this is obviously also a part of it. I kind of knew that like it was going to be a big deal, but being down in Vegas and seeing like how much fan interest there was in him and seeing how much media coverage from China there was in him just for Summer League, I don't think people are even after we've been talking about it all summer, I don't think people are prepared for how big of a deal it's going to be if he's even, a rotation player. Because if you really think about it, for as big of a country as China is, obviously, with as many people as they have, and as basketball obsessed as they are, who is the second best player ever to come from China besides Yao? Is it Yi Jianlan? He was a lottery pick, but
high profile, probably. So
then, it's like it's really not a long list of guys to if Young Hansen he doesn't even have to ever be an all-star. If he has like Mason Plumlee's career, he's the second best Chinese player ever besides Yao. And then if he actually is Chinese Jokic, which Jake Fisher tweeted that a Nuggets scout told him he was on draft night, then that just takes it to a different level. Now, I'm not one of these people that believes that they drafted him for, marketing reasons or for off-court reasons. Like, I know that's something that's been floated around, but I actually know quite a bit about the amount of work that Joe Cronin and Mike Schmitz and their front office staff put into scouting him and how long it took for them to be able to even get over there to see him and how long they had been on him before they decided to draft him and all of this other kind of stuff. But that other stuff that comes with drafting him is certainly not going to hurt. So I think, the sale is the most important thing, because the most important thing about any team is who owns the team. But I think the Young Hansen thing, as far as the on-court impact that a lot of this stuff could have, I think that's actually the most impactful one and not the Dame one.
Yeah, the amount of intrigue around watching this guy. And the thing that I was a little surprised, like I saw somewhere that he has like the biggest hands in the NBA, like it's 99th percentile.
Doesn't surprise me.
And he's as insane touch. That to me was really, and obviously the processing stuff is just on another level.
Yeah.
I hope he's good. The league will be way more fun if this guy was really good. But I do want to talk about the sale. How are Blazers fans feeling about the sale and where this all ended up?
We've all kind of known for 7 years, ever since Paul Allen died in 2018, that the team was going to have to be sold eventually, because it was written in his will and in his estate that everything that he owned was eventually going to have to be sold, and all the proceeds were going to go to his various charitable interests and his foundation and all that kind of stuff. But there was never a hard timeline on, this is when the team has to be sold by, at least not one that was made public. And so a few years ago, when Phil Knight put in an offer for $2 billion to buy the team, which, in retrospect, when you consider how much it went for and how much other teams are going for, $2 billion wasn't going to get it done even 2 years ago. But when Phil Knight puts in that bid, everybody's all excited because, the Nike guy, guy with local ties, like this is perfect. And then when they said no, and then they basically said at the time, the Paul Allen estate, Jody Allen actually made a public comment, which he very rarely does, that these types of estates could take 10 to 20 years to unwind. And since then, it's been, every time we've asked anybody in the organization about it, it's just been, there's no update. You don't know when the team's going to be sold. It's going to be sold eventually, but we don't know when it's going to be sold. So when they announced in May that they were putting the team up for sale, everybody was really excited about it locally because this was something that people have wanted for a long time. And I'll say this, I don't know Jody Allen at all. I've never met her. I've never talked to her. She doesn't make herself available to media in any way. I've literally never been within 20 feet of her. But from what I've heard from people in the organization that do work with her closely, she is actually more engaged than I think the public perception is. And she's been totally supportive, both, financially and creatively, with things that people on both the business and basketball sides of the organization have wanted to do. So I think a lot of the kind of fan animosity towards her, just based on what I know, is a little bit unfair. But I also know that literally because of what was written in Paul Allen's will, her owning the team and her and Bert Kold, who was Paul Allen's kind of right-hand guy when he was alive, being the ones that make all the decisions, was never going to be a long-term thing. And it was always just going to sort of be an interim thing and an in-between thing for however long it took for them to sell the team. So I think the fact that that's all done now. We know that they're not going to own the team past however long it takes for the Board of Governors to vet everything with this. And then you look at Tom Dundon, who I didn't really know much about before his name emerged as the guy that was going to buy the team. But you look at, the fact that he bought a team already in the NHL that hadn't really done anything in a number of years, is in a small market similar to Portland. And they've been a playoff team pretty much every year since he bought the team. I don't really know a lot about hockey, but people I know who are in that world say that franchise, both, on the ice and as far as like the fan experience and, other stuff with the organization, have all completely turned around since Tom Dundon bought the Hurricanes. So that's all pretty encouraging. I think the thing long term that's really going to be the most impactful thing with the new ownership is what the arena situation ends up looking like. And that's something that's going to be figured out for, over the next few years. I'm not at all concerned about the Blazers moving. That's something that has been kind of floated really since they announced that the team was for sale. There's been some, in local media and some, certain, sections of the fan base that immediately jumped to like panicking about that. I think a lot of that is kind of consent manufacturing for, public funds being used to build a new arena or for fund, a renovation for the Moda Center. I think that's what a lot of that is. But it's going to be interesting to kind of find out whether once Tom Dundon officially owns the team and his group, are they going to push for a fully new arena, or are they going to go along with the plan that the Blazers have kind of had in place over the last few years, which is to do a multi-year, super, in-depth renovation of the Moda Center as it is, and just kind of go forward with that? That's really what ended up happening with the Hurricanes. When he bought the team, he ended up getting the city of Raleigh to pay for a $300 million renovation to the arena that they already played in. And then they signed a long-term lease to stay there, and they didn't build a whole new arena. So I think they're going to probably try to push for a new arena just because usually that's what the new owner comes in and wants. Yeah. But I don't think the Moda Center is so old and so decrepit that it absolutely could not still be the Blazers arena for many years with, a major renovation, which I do think it needs. But that, however that ends up landing, that I think is going to be the biggest thing to come out of the sale.
Yeah. And my guess is that the league would push for a brand new arena as well.
Well, Adam Silver said that on the record at the Board of Governors press conference. So, yeah,
they want new arenas. I think that's quite clear when you look across the NBA. Who are the best three players on this team?
I think one of them has to be Drew Holiday, who they just traded for.
Okay.
So look, Drew he's not quite the same guy he was 2 years ago when the Blazers got him in the first Dame trade and then traded him to Boston. And then he helped the Celtics win a championship. He had kind of a down year last year, but I think he's still really good. And I think he still has at least a couple, 2-3 years left where he's going to be really impactful. And, especially on the defensive end, he's a huge upgrade over Anthony Simons. So I think Drew is one of them. And then I think the other two, at least based on who their two best players were last year, I think you kind of have to say Deni Avdija and Toumani Camara.
Okay. Who do you think is the best? You don't think that Drew is their best player, do you?
I mean, if you look at like career accomplishments and like still being impactful,
what about just
on
this year, for just this season?
Could be Drew, could be Deni Avdija.
Okay.
I don't know. I think it's one of those three.
Yeah.
That would be kind of where I would land. I think I'd probably lean towards Drew just based on, tenure and based on, seniority. But
yeah,
it could be any of those three.
Yeah, that's interesting. Who starts?
If you make me pick the 5 starters right now, and this is just my own read and my own opinion and B guess, this is not sourced. I don't want this to get aggregated like they're suddenly like this is who they're going to start. I had that happen a few weeks ago. I wrote in a mailbag that, they should consider bringing Jerami Grant off the bench if he doesn't earn a starting spot. And then that got turned into, that Heiken reports that Jerami Grant is going to like nobody's decided anything. So I just want to make it clear none of this is sourced. If you make me decide right now who I think the opening night starters are going to be, I think it's going to be Scoot Henderson, Drew Holiday, Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, Donovan Clingan.
Okay. Interesting. This is a team that there are a few teams like this, but I just really have no clue. I feel like there are so many different combinations.
There's a lot
things
of guys
that
could be, it could still be Jerami Grant, it could be Shaedon Sharpe.
Sure.
I mean, I don't think it will be, but it could be Matisse Thybulle if Chauncey just really wants defense. Just the most, I don't know, but I think that probably makes the most sense out of like if I were the one deciding it, I would probably have it be those 5. And I think that's probably where it's going to end up just based on my own kind of read of where things are.
Yeah, that makes sense to me too. I think like Scoot, this is a big year for him.
Huge.
What are the expectations and kind of thoughts about where this is going with Scoot Henderson?
Well, they're really encouraged by what he was the second half of the season. It was pretty rough his rookie season. And really for the first couple months of his second season, there was I don't want to use the word, but there was a lot of talk about like, is this a bust? Like, is this guy like, it was so far below what the expectations were that that was a conversation that was being had locally. I think he's kind of cleared that at this point. I don't think anybody's really still thinking about him in those terms. Is he a franchise guy like they thought he was when they drafted him 3rd overall and basically caused Dame to request a trade by drafting him instead of trading that pick? I don't know if he is, but I think they're encouraged enough by some of the improvements that he made. His shooting has gotten a lot better, which that was never one of his strengths coming into the league when he was in the G League. That was never a strong point of his, but he's gotten more consistent as a shooter. The finishing stuff, I think, is gotten better. That still has a little ways to go, but that's something he's going to have to get into. I think his playmaking has always been, the passing instincts have always been there. I think there's a lot of room, and I think trading Anthony Simons has really cleared the runway out for him to earn that starting spot at point guard this season. And with the Drew Holiday thing, Drew is such a I think at this point in his career, if they had traded for Drew 5 years ago, he would have been starting at point guard. But at this point in his career, I think Drew is more of a 3-and-D guy, more of like a guy that plays off ball. I think that's just kind of where he is right now at his age and just the way he plays now and the way he's played for the last couple of years. So I think him and Scoot together is actually a combination that makes a lot of sense. And there are obviously, because the move was such a big deal when they first announced it, there are people wondering what does bringing Dame back mean for Scoot, or what does that say about where they feel he is. A, like I said, Dame's not going to play this year, so you don't even have to worry about that for another year. And B, like, I hate to say this because it's obviously a great story, Dame coming back to end his career in Portland. the guy is going to be 37 the next time he plays, and he's coming off of a torn Achilles, which basically only Kevin Durant, who was 30 when he tore his, has come back from at the same, level that he was at before. Kobe was 35 when he tore his, and he was never the same guy after that. Everybody's been talking about John Wall the last week because he just retired. That was another guy that was never the same guy after he tore his Achilles. So I think expecting Dame to come back and be, the all-star level guy that, even though he had a couple of, a down year last year in Milwaukee, he was still an all-star level guy. Like, expecting him to come back after a torn Achilles and be that. I'm not saying it couldn't happen, but I think expecting it is not really something that anybody should do, just based on, the history of guys that age and that size with that injury. So I think if Scoot continues to improve the way he did the second half of last year, like, it's all there for him.
Who do you think has a chance to be traded from this team? I feel like there's a lot of candidates for that question too, even though they've just traded several guys.
They just traded. I mean, the guy that I think they kind of needed to, I think the Anthony Simons thing was a big one to clear up. With considering he was up for a new contract, they tried to trade DeAndre Ayton and they couldn't find anything without taking back long-term money. So they ended up just buying him out, which is going to clear a lot of playing time for both young Hansen and for Klingon.
Yeah. Who's next in line? Are they going to? Can you trade Jerami Grant at this point?
That's the thing that I think. If there's a guy that I think they should trade, it would be Jerami Grant. I don't think he really makes a lot of sense on this team as it's currently constructed. I think it's very clear that the two starting forwards, just based on how good everybody was last year, those two spots have to go to Deni Avdija and Toumani Camara.
Yeah.
So I don't know where Jerami fits in there, but to your point, just with that contract, and now especially after he had kind of a down year last year, I'm not at all surprised that they haven't really been able to find anything for him this summer. That there's not that much of a market. Maybe he rebuilds his value towards the deadline. Maybe he, has a good first half of the season, and there's a team that decides they do want to trade for him. But right now, I think if the Blazers could trade anybody on the roster, that's who I think they should trade. But I don't know. Like, I don't know if there's like a lot of obvious, Rob Williams, I think, is the other one, but they've kind of always been in this weird spot with him where he's good enough that if he ever was healthy, he's a guy that you could probably get like at least one first round pick for, because he's so impactful on that end. But because he's never healthy, you're not really getting anything close to that kind of value for him. And if you're not only getting like second round picks or whatever, then at that point, they'd rather just keep him because they like him as a guy and they like what he brings in the locker room, and they like what he does when he is healthy, but he's also never healthy. So that's just one of those things where they're just kind of in a weird spot with him. As far as the younger guys, I don't know. I mean, I think it's pretty clear that they are still very committed to Scoot Henderson, Shaedon Sharpe, Deni Avdija, Toumani Camara, Donovan Klingon, now young Hansen. I think those are the guys that they view, at least as of right now, as the guys that they're building around, like long-term, like over the next, because like the Drew thing's a short-term thing. And obviously the Dame thing is a short-term thing over the next couple of years as he nears the end of his career. But those six guys that I named, I think, are the six that they see as, guys that are going to be here for the long haul. And anybody besides that, I think it's certainly possible could be moved. But, they kind of did what they were going to do this summer. I don't think there's anything really imminent with anybody else right now.
Yeah, the Jerami contract is going to be tough to move. He's 32, 34, 36 for the next 3 years. The last year's a player option. Yeah. He just has to play better. It was just a weird year for him. He shot 36% from three, which is fine. He shot 38% from two. Yeah. I don't even know how that's possible. Yeah. What was the deal?
He just wasn't making those shots. I think he's still, a decent enough defender that like he, there are things he like. I think he's still like, an NBA rotation player. It's not, I don't think it's as bad as it was this year long term, but just, that contract, that age, that it's kind of tough. And I mean, that contract that they gave him was kind of I think it was kind of agreed to when they first traded for him, because he was a guy that Dame really pushed to get. that last summer before Dame requested a trade. And then giving him that contract was kind of a last ditch attempt to get Dame not to request a trade. And then Dame ends up requesting a trade 24 hours after they agree to that deal with Jerami. And then you can't really just like back out of that contract.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way they spun it at the time, and I think there was some truth to this, was even though, you know, Jerami doesn't obviously make a lot of sense on a rebuilding team, they wanted to have some vets around and not have the entire team just be kids with no adults in the room. And they liked Jerami as a guy and as a locker room guy. And they felt like he was still, you know, provided enough value on the court that when they needed to later on, they would be able to move him. I think that part of it was a little bit of a miscalculation with how restrictive some of the rules about salary matching and the apron stuff is with the current CBA.
Yeah.
I think that part they maybe miscalculated a little bit, but it's kind of tough to figure out where he fits long term on this roster. But unless they can find a way to move him, he's gonna be here. So, you know, we'll see how it ends up shaking out.
Mm-hmm. What's the biggest swing factor for this team? Let's say that they progress from that 36 wins to low 40s, you know, sneak into the play-in. What's the biggest swing factor for them to get there?
I think it's the two young guards. I think it's Scoot Henderson and it's Shaedon Sharpe. We've talked about Scoot already. If Scoot becomes, you know, a clear cut, you know, good starting point guard, like a playoff caliber starting point guard, if Scoot makes that leap and kind of continues the progress that he had the second half of last season, then I think that's going to be big. This is a big year for Shaedon Sharpe too, because he is extension eligible. If I had to guess right now, I don't think they agree to anything before the deadline in October. But this is a big year for him because I think he's the most talented player on this entire roster. If you just look at like pure, you know, athletic ability, physical talent, and like what the high end of what he could look like. He just hasn't done that. Like, he's the guy that I think that if he hits his ceiling, he could be like a multiple time all-star. Like, that's how talented I think Shaedon Sharpe is. But he just has not done that consistently. You know, his second year, he missed a lot of time with the core injury. Last year, you know, he played and he was really good at some points. And then other times, like when they started their turnaround in January, Chauncey Billups benched him and made it very clear publicly that the reason that he benched him was because he didn't like the way that he was defending. And Shaedon ended up responding to that and playing better on that end later on. But it's just, you want to see him put together a full, consistent season of what the best version of himself is at both ends of the floor. And he hasn't done that yet. But if he can do that, then I think that changed a lot about their ceiling.
Last question. What's the most realistic outcome for the Blazers this season?
I think they could get the 10th seed.
Okay.
I think they could. I think anything above that is a little bit ambitious, but you look at the bottom of the West, I think they're clear. There are four teams that I think they're pretty clearly better than. And that's Utah, New Orleans, Sacramento, Phoenix. And then you look at those other teams and it's like, you know, Memphis is already starting to have injury problems. You know, what if Kyrie Irving doesn't come back and, you know, Anthony Davis misses a bunch of time? Like Dallas could fall. Like, I think they're like comfortably the 11th best team in the West as far as like where I would have them just on paper. Everybody's healthy. But if you think they're the 11th best team, then you just have to think that a couple of those teams in front of them have, you know, bad injury luck or have something go wrong or whatever, which inevitably it will for somebody. So I think that 9-10 play-in range is probably the most comfortable ceiling that I would put on them right now.
Go check out Sean at the Rose Garden Report. Anything else you'd like to promote before we get out of here?
Not really. Just go subscribe. I got a new show starting on Rip City Radio 620 that
beautiful
is probably going to start closer to the end of the season. I'm sure it's going to be available on podcast platforms. We're still hammering a lot of that stuff out, but that's coming. The WNBA team, the Portland Fire, they just did a press conference this morning when we're recording this to announce their new general manager, Vanya Siernovich, who I think I'm pronouncing that name right. She was the Golden State Valkyries assistant GM. So, you know, people are excited about that hire. Then, you know, whenever the CBA gets done, we'll find out about the expansion draft. So that's something I'm going to have a lot of coverage of whenever that happens. And just, yeah, I mean, this is going to be however it ends up going, this is going to be probably the most interesting Blazers season on a number of fronts in a long time. And I'm actually I think I'm more excited for training camp to get started than I have been in a number of years.
Yeah, there's a lot of different outcomes for this Blazers team. And it's not even necessarily wins related, but by the end of the season, I just feel like there's going to be so much more information about the roster and the players that I think is honestly should be intriguing for NBA fans. Sean, we really appreciate you coming on, and we'll talk to you. We'll bring you on again when there's more Blazers topics.
Yeah, always good to talk to you, man.